Hello, everyone. I'm Bo from Brutal Commentary, and today I'm going to be breaking down our main event for UFC 321. In this one, we have the heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall making his first title defense of his now new undisputed title against the former interim champion and two-time title challenger Ciryl Gane. Aspinall is 15-5 as a professional, 4-1 in his last 5 fights. Meanwhile, Gane is 13-2 as a professional, 3-2 in his last 5 fights. Looking at Aspinall's last 5, he submitted Volkov about 2 years ago, or actually, sorry, longer than that, about March of 2022. Then suffered his only loss in the UFC, which was a 15-second knee injury to Curtis Blades. Took about a year off, then returned in 2023 in July, where he ran right through Marcin Tybura as if he never left. Then at UFC 295, defeated and knocked out Sergey Pavlovich in a minute and 2 seconds to win the interim heavyweight title. Then, stupidly, he had to defend the interim title instead of fighting for the undisputed title last July at UFC 304 against Curtis Blades in the rematch, in which he knocked him out in a minute. And then basically he was on the shelf for over a year, waiting for John Jones to quit ducking him. But, Jones didn't want the smoke and he retired. And the belt and decided to, vacate the belt, promoting Aspinall to the undisputed champion now. So now he officially makes his first defense as the newly undisputed champion against Bongame. Meanwhile, Gane, looking at his last 5, he lost his first attempt at the undisputed title against Francis Ngannou back at UFC 270 for the unification match. Then headlined the first UFC event in Paris when he TKO'd Tai Tuivasa. Then lost his second attempt at the title when he got submitted by John Jones in a little over 2 minutes at UFC 285. Now riding a 2-fight win streak, TKOing Sergey Spivak September of 2023. And then last December at UFC 310, he defeated Alexander Volkov in the rematch in a fight he should not have won. You can't convince me otherwise. He had lost those last 2 rounds. It should be Alexander Volkov fighting for the title, but, whatever at this point. So, I would say this for sure. I know the easiest thing to say is, Tom Aspinall is going to rugby tackle Ciryl Gane in a minute or so and then just submit him like it's absolutely nothing. End of the prediction, right? I feel like there's a bit more to this than what most people think, or at least against like common or conventional wisdom is what I think. One, you look at this fight, it is between easily the two most technically proficient heavyweights we've seen in years, the two most athletic heavyweights maybe ever, and without a doubt the two fastest heavyweights we had ever seen. Looking at Tom Aspinall first, he is a destroyer, absolute destroyer. You look at it, he has the shortest fight time in UFC history in about 2 minutes. His longest UFC fight is in round 2, which wasn't even that long when he just ran over Andrei Arlovski to submit him in about a minute of round 2. It's so crazy. He barely leaves the first round. And you look at the 2 title fights that Aspinall's had, they are a combined 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Holy crap. And you look at who he's fighting too. It's not like he's fighting chumps, right? Volkov, he beat rough in around the 3-minute mark or so of round 1. Tybura beat him in about a minute, 20 seconds or so. Then Pavlovich, who at the time seemed like the scariest contender in the division, besides Aspinall, beat him in a minute and 2 seconds. And then Curtis Blades, who is a very good heavyweight, a clear top 5 threat in the division, beat him in a minute. It's crazy because when you break down Tom Aspinall, there are some things you can easily break down, like his attributes, his overall technique for the most part, and his ability to finish fights. But you ask yourself some certain questions because, for example, how does his cardio look like after 2 rounds going into the 3rd? I ain't got no fucking clue. What does he look like in the face of adversity? Like, what if someone takes him down? How's he off his back? I couldn't tell you. Literally, there's so little fight tape on him because his fights usually end in the first round that there's very little you can really go off of. And Aspinall himself has said he likes that there's little tape off him. Means he can, surprise his opponent with something they've never seen before. Now, I can tell you what I do know about him. Aspinall's ability to finish fights is just terrifying, especially for a heavyweight. It's more so his hand speed is what really distinguishes him. Aspinall at a fit, physically strong 252 heavyweight, it moves like a middleweight. His hand speed specifically is what leads to so many of his knockouts, because not only does he have fight ending power, but he also has the accuracy and speed in which to just fire his 1-2 just right off the gate. And that's mostly what knocks out his opponents. Like, for example, his debut against Tanner Boser, where he just fired a pinpoint 1-2 with such speed, it didn't look like a heavyweight's hands. It looked like a middleweight or even a fighter of the lower weight classes than a middleweight. They'd have fired that 1-2. And it was so pinpoint and right on the button that, it ended the night in about 14 seconds. Or I can go even more recently and think of the Curtis Blades fight, where Aspinall fired a piston-like jab at such speed and such timing and, such accuracy, it dropped Blades. I mean, Aspinall was throwing a 1-2, the right hand missed, but the jab dropped Curtis Blades. Or, for example, against Marcin Tybura, as Tybura was trying to guard like a high kick and an elbow, Aspinall literally crashes in with a sniper's like jab cross and then just folds Tybura. Literally, it's Aspinall's a combination of accuracy, hand speed, and power are what make him such a threat. I think he's the best boxer at heavyweight, and certainly one of the fastest fighters in the division. His ability, and you don't see him have plodding footwork like most other heavyweights. He actually bounces on the balls of his feet. He goes from side to side. He has good linear movement and has really good head movement, or at least improved head movement. For example, Volkov was trying to fire off a cross. Aspinall ducked and then shot him for a double leg. That kind of head movement is kind of unheard of in this division. In fact, or I can't think of a single heavyweight that moves like him. Now, it's not just his striking too, because Aspinall also has really good high kicks, very good elbows in close range. For example, you watch his fight with Sergey Spivak, where he's able to maintain great balance, captures the biceps of Spivak and avoids any of Spivak's, judo throws, and then crashes Spivak with an elbow straight to the face that just kind of shuts the lights off. It's kind of like one of those delayed effects, like Edson Barboza versus Shane Burgos, where the elbow connected to Spivak. He looks fine for a second, and then the lights start realizing, oh, we're off, bye, and just falls. That type of delayed effect as well can be really nasty, especially when you see it in real time. Now, as I said, though, Aspinall is also very well-rounded. His background's actually in jiu-jitsu, and his dad is one of the best English jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world, or of his time anyway. And you see it in Aspinall's fights. He does go for takedowns as well, whether it was that blast double against Volkov or the takedown against Arlovsky. He at the beginning of the second round. Then Aspinall transitions to the back and then sinks up the rear naked choke in no time flat. It's like takedown, transition, rear naked choke, all in the span of a few seconds. Or he even has rarer submissions you don't often see. For example, when he took Volkov down, he transitioned to side control and then went for more or less the crucifix position and then got the straight arm lock of submission you very rarely see in MMA as well. So he's a well-rounded hit threat. He can either finish fights on the feet, he can finish them on the mat. Anywhere the fight goes, Aspinall has the potential to finish fights. Now, I also look as I said, the unknown is for example, what's his cardio like after round 2? Again, I don't know, and I don't know what his defensive jiu-jitsu is like off his back or his get-up ability. And it's not just because most opponents don't last that long against him. It's because he's got great takedown defense. Of the fighters who've attempted to take him down, you think of Curtis Blades and Sergey Spivak. Blades, who on paper is the best wrestler in the division, tried like a blast double, and Aspinall was able to immediately fight for the underhooks and fight off Blades in the clinch and then get to space. Or Spivak, who, unlike Blades, goes for judo throws and sambo-like wrestling, which is, again, mostly that clinch style, going for hip tosses, foot sweeps, that kind of stuff. And Aspinall was not only able to create enough distance in the clinch or enough space by, again, trapping the biceps, but he was also very aware of where his foot placement was, being able to lift his feet up when the trip was coming, and or just keeping overall good balance, as well as, hitting knees to the body as well. His balance is spectacular as well. Honestly, I can't really just sing enough praises when it comes to Tom Aspinall overall. Again, very little we know about him in terms of some of his attributes, like I said, cardio and all that. But I mean, that's not my fault. That's not nobody's fault. Oh, not even Aspinall's opponents. Just Aspinall's that good at finishing fights, and he has the off switch. Is best way I can tell you. It may not even that he's like hits as hard as, say, Francis Ngannou, but you know what they say, right? Timing beats power and precision beats speed. Man, I can't believe I'm misremembering the McGregor quote off the top of my head. But precision beats power and timing beats speed. And that's what Aspinall does to a T. His timing, his accuracy, and his speed are just unmatched. As I said, I think he has the fastest hands in the heavyweight division, and maybe in all of heavyweight MMA. Now, if there is one thing overall I would say that is concerning of Aspinall, he does have some bad defensive habits, specifically in the boxing. You do notice his chin up is in the air oftentimes more so than you would want to see, especially in a division where one punch can end the night. Now, overall, he's shown a good chin. Like, for example, Pavlovich tagged him with a good right hand, but Aspinall seemingly was able to shrug it off. And when Blades kind of touched him a little bit in both their fights, didn't affect Aspinall. But overall, Aspinall has seemingly improved his head movement overall. And more times than not, he finished his fights before any real trouble can happen. And overall, it seems like he has a good chin. And like I said, he took one punch from Pavlovich, seemingly was fine. He took some hits from Arlovsky, but Arlovsky's not really that hard of a puncher. And Volkov was not able to touch him. Tybor was not able to touch him. Everyone else I'm thinking of was not able to touch Aspinall. Now looking at Ciryl Gane, he is, I would say, the overall better striker and probably the best striker in the division, few and far between, or like second to none. Now, Gane comes from a Muay Thai background. In fact, he fought professional Muay Thai before he transitioned to MMA. And you can see how well that has translated for him in MMA. Gane's ability to move laterally and so fluidly while just being on the balls of his feet, hopping side to side. Most of these big heavyweights and most of these like unathletic or slow heavyweights are just left in his dust. And Gane's ability to fire precision shots from a distance are great as well. Gane uses his 81-inch reach fantastically. There's something, though, I've noticed watching Gane's fights. If you notice, it doesn't matter what stance he's in, because he can switch stances to orthodox or southpaw, it doesn't matter. You notice majority of Gane's striking is simply a jab, a teep kick to the body, and a leg kick. That's really it. He very rarely ever throws his rear hand, no matter what stance he's in, unless he knows for certain his opponent is hurt, and then he can capitalize off it and go for the finish. Other than that, very rarely throws his rear hand. It's just jabs, and sometimes he aims those jabs with like pinpoint accuracy. Like sometimes he'll aim for the eye or like the nose, or just stabbing teep kicks to the gut to take the wind out of his opponent's sails, and then leg kicks to just rack up damage slowly but surely. Gane is very fine with point fighting for 25 minutes or less, or when it knows his opponents are hurt, he has great finishing instincts. Like, for example, he hurt Tai Tuivasa and then went for the kill. He hurt Sergey Spivak, went for the kill. only when he knows 100% certain, it seems, that his opponents aren't going to be able to fire back any, dangerous overhand rights or like dangerous looping left hooks, then Gane really lets it all go. And he has some good creative striking, like those step in knees to the body he throws, good elbows, even threw it like a no look spinning back elbow to Francis Ngannou in the clinch, too. Sometimes he'll throw those odd punches like those standing hammer fists, or like do this weird thing with his wrist and then throw a side hammer fist. It'd be weird like that, but yeah, it seems to work. Now, obviously, the big concern about Gane is his defensive wrestling. Francis Ngannou, who had no ACL at that time, was able to take down Gane multiple times in their fight. John Jones took him down kind of once and then ended it there with the guillotine. And Volkov was able to take him down numerous times in their fights and hold the Gane down. There's also other things about Gane that I've noticed too in his striking that I'm not the huge fan of. Now, like I said, overall, he, I think, is the fastest fighter in the division overall when it comes to his striking movements, and the most well-balanced, fluid heavyweight in the division. But there's sometimes when his opponents get really close where he does certain ticks I really hate to watch. For example, he like pushes them away with both hands, just out there, leaving his chin exposed. He'll literally like dip his head and look the other way when circling around. It's kind of stuff like that that has some that leaves some big concerns, especially like you're literally taking your eyes off your opponent, or again you're pushing them away. Your chin is exposed, your hands are out there, and you might not be able to retract them fast enough. But again, it's mostly the defensive holes in his grappling that are the big problem. Now, I think it's a bit forgivable with Francis Ngannou because I don't think Ciryl Gane was expecting Gane to wrestle. And, Francis Ngannou is such a physical beast that being able to just muscle his way to the takedowns was highly feasible. In fact, you saw when like Ngannou catched a kick from Gane, he literally just lifted him up in the air before taking him down. That's like but then you look at the John Jones fight where Ciryl Gane just made some bad mistakes overall, and kind of just let Jones get close to him and then get the seatbelt grip and then and then drag Gane down. But it's mostly when Gane's like, for example, in the rematch with Volkov, when Gane goes for a teep kick to the body, Volkov catches the leg, and it's Ciryl Gane who is kind of, I guess, overreacting would be the best word, as he's kind of like flailing about trying to get his leg free, and he stumbles and falls, and then Volkov capitalizes on it. Now, I will say Gane has made steady improvements overall in his ability to get up and fighting the takedowns, but his overall motions for defensive wrestling, like fighting the grips and or trying to fight for the underhooks and all that, is more or less robotic. It's not like all one fluid transition like his striking. It's kind of like step by step, very rigid like, in comparison to say, for example, like Gelton Almeida versus Sergey Spivak is probably the best example I have. Again, odd fight to think of, especially when this is mostly a fight that's probably going to be contested on the feet. But hear me out. You saw in the Almeida fight and the Spivak fight, when they were transitioning on the ground, you saw how fluid their movements were and how they're kind of able to transition to position from position, more or less, without too much resistance nor too much like pause in their motions. Gane's the opposite. You see him have these pauses like, okay, this is step one. What's step two? Oh, that's step two. Ooh, then let me do that. It's all kind of like reading off a manual and then just like slowly doing the motion instead of like, reactive, instinctual, that kind of stuff. That being said, it's very the opposite for striking, where it's very instinctual. Well, he has really good timing with his precision shots, and is oftentimes when his opponents are on the back of the fence, that's when he really starts to pick up more or less the volume and with his safe strikes. I think Gane has mastered one of the fundamental rules of Muay Thai. It's focus on the safe strikes. Those being his jab, his teep kick, his leg kick. Those are your safe strikes in Muay Thai. And he's mastered them to a great degree. And while, you never really want to see a fighter with their hands down, especially, like I said, in heavyweight, where one punch ends it all, I'd say Gane overall has a really good chin. He took some big bombs from Tai Tuivasa and was still standing. I'm thinking no, Ngannou didn't hit him cleanly, but I know Volkov did, especially with that spinning back fist, and Gane was more or less able to shrug it off. Gane's got a pretty good chin overall, and as I said, and Taito Iwasa, as bad as he is right now and on this terrible skid he is, he does have fight-ending power in that right hand, to say the least. And he dropped Gane, but Gane immediately got back up and started fighting again. And that's also something you'll notice. Gane, even under fire, fights back fire fighter pretty well. Like, for example, that brawl he had with Taito Iwasa, where majority of the fight was him doing his thing, picking apart Taito Iwasa from range and fighting a smart tactical kickboxing match. The moment those two started slugging, Ciryl Gane didn't let his technique get away with him for the most part. Throwing those, digging those body shots to tie, throwing a head kick after setting it up with multiple leg kicks, and then really putting more emphasis on his punches. As I said, though, he doesn't really throw the cross until he knows his opponent is hurt, and then he starts to unload. But those are the type of things where I can at least think, no matter, even if under fire, Gane will fight back. Now, Volkov, he didn't really show that. It was more so he was fighting not to lose, is the term most people have used, and that makes sense. Now, I know he said he broke his toes in the first round after Volkov probably blocked the kick with his elbow, and lose your toes getting broken, and that does hinder your balance, and that is something you're thinking about the entire fight. So I can understand maybe that's why he was more so defensive and less willing to engage Volkov in comparison to their first fight. Now how these two meet in the middle. While this is on the feet, I think Gane is going to be the only heavyweight on the roster who's going to give Aspinall trouble, as Gane can match him in not only movement, but in speed. Now, I think Aspinall's hand speed is better than Gane, and I do think Aspinall is going to be the harder puncher for sure. But overall, Gane's movements and ability to circle away, even when fighters are pressing forward against him, Gane usually is able to circle back because most heavyweights don't have the footwork to cut off the cage and trap him along the fence. Now, Aspinall is going to be one of the few heavyweights who can, so that leaves some intrigue, as both are very light on their feet. They both move side to side, and they don't really just charge forward or just slowly creep up. They cut angles very well, both of them. But I think overall, I would think Gane is going to be overall the better striker. He at least has the striking background to make me believe that. And, I do think Aspinall does have some defensive lapses. As I said, his chin is up there a little bit too much at times, doesn't really tuck it in. And I think he relies a little too much on head movement like Gane. But Gane isn't, a one-hitter quitter. He's like Volkov, accumulative damage over the course of the fight, leads to his finishes. And I think if Aspinall lands cleanly on Gane, he's going to drop him like Ty did and go for the finish. Is much better than Taito Iwasa did. But it's just so hard to ignore the glaring weakness in Gane's grappling. That's honestly, why the odds are what they are. Minus 380 for Aspinall, plus 300 for Gane. This makes total sense. Gane just has way too much of a glaring weakness in that grappling to make me even think that he can contest with Aspinall when Aspinall takes Gane down, because he's going to take him down. I don't think Gane can defend the takedowns, and I don't see him being able to keep this on the feet for 25 minutes or less. Now, looking at their physical stats, Aspinall is going to be slightly bigger at 6'5", with the 78-inch reach. Gane is going to be 6'4", with the 81-inch reach, so he is going to beat Aspinall on reach. That is something to keep in mind, especially while this is on the feet and Gane is going to implement his long-distance striking. But I think once Aspinall is able to use his own footwork to cut angles better, get Gane against the fence and or close enough, like behind the black line, I think Aspinall is going to fire in a blast double leg or just like a powerful takedown immediately, get Gane down. And I think I'm picking Tom Aspinall. I'm going to pick him via submission in this fight. While on the feet, this is going to be a lot closer than what I think some people think. And I think Gane will give Aspinall more trouble on the feet than just about every other one of his opponents. The grappling is just so too much of a glaring hole to overlook. And when a fighter like Gane has such a glaring hole in their game against a well-rounded fighter like Aspinall, you got to pick the well-rounded fighter just about every time. So I'm going to pick Tom Aspinall. My official prediction, I'm going to pick him via submission. But with that being said, that's been my breakdown of our main event for UFC 321. If you like the video, comment, and subscribe. Do you think Aspinall will not only win, but how far do you think his title run will go? Or do you think Gane will be able to defeat Aspinall and become France's first champ? And before I go, I will say this is kind of like the European super fight of MMA, England versus France. You kind of got to love it. But with that being said, I've been Bo from Brutal Commentary. I thank you all for listening. Take care now.